The Trump White House is in damage control over an explosive new article in Vanity Fair in which some pretty nasty things are said about the Trump administration by a radical, left-woke Antifa Democrat traitor. Wait, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. Donald Trump's current chief of staff. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. By now, you're probably well aware of everyone in Trump's orbit: the vice president, the attorney general, the health secretary, and the deputy health secretary, RFK Jr.'s brainworm. But you might be less familiar with the current White House chief of staff, Susie Wiles. Wiles rarely talks or appears in public, except for that one time she was spotted standing behind Trump in the Oval Office and making a face like Daniel Craig just accused her of murder. Well, look what we have here. It turns out the perpetrator of this nefarious act was Miss Susie in the Oval Office with a rolling pin. It wasn't me. It was my lookalike Paula Deen. By the way, that photo was taken from an Oval Office meeting earlier this year. She looks like she just got an eye transplant from Rudy Giuliani. They're all yours, Susie. I don't need them anymore. I got a brand new pair from Spirit Halloween. The whole thing was covered by my insurance. It's not a HMO, it's an HMO. Oh, no, Rudy, you done it again. Anyway, the point is, Wiles never talks in public, but she is one of the most important figures in Trump's second term. She's so important that Trump has started giving her a new nickname.
So, Susie Trump. Do you know Susie Trump? Sometimes referred to as Susie Wiles, Susie Trump. She's the great chief of staff. Where's Susie? Susie, come on, Susie. Look at Susie. Susie's the greatest.
Getting real lazy with the nicknames. He used to have bangers like Little Marco and Lion Ted. Now he's just giving people his name. It's like if you got a job at Chipotle and your new boss said, I'm kind of known for coming up with good nicknames, so from now on, you're Mike Chipotle. You'll be working with Jeff Chipotle over here, and that tall guy over there with the curly red hair and clown makeup, you probably guess what we call him. Ronald McDonald? Oh, no, that's good, though. We call him Mark Chipotle. Also, can we go back to this?
Where's Susie? Susie, come on, Susie.
Dude, you never sound older and more out of it than when you're asking where someone is. He sounds like he's in a hospital bed hallucinating about an old flame. Susie, where is Susie? Dad, who's Susie? My first love? We met in Paris in 49, but you met Mom in 44. I don't care about Mom. I want Susie. Susie can have you for all I care. You're no catch. I'm going back to my puzzles. Just when are you gonna die? The point is, Wiles is so important to Trump that he has bestowed his name upon her, although he might take it back after an explosive interview.
Vanity Fair released a stunning new interview, a series of interviews with Susie Wiles, President Trump's chief of staff.
Susie Wiles offered a stunning assessment of the central characters in the White House, starting with her boss, saying President Trump has an alcoholic's personality. As for Vice President Vance, Wiles says he's been a conspiracy theorist for a decade. Wiles also had words for Elon Musk, who she called an avowed ketamine user.
In fact, he used so much ketamine around the office, we had a nickname for him, Elon Ketamine. The weird thing about this is it's stuff we already knew, and in many ways it's not surprising, except that it's coming from the White House chief of staff, and not a former chief of staff, mind you. She is still employed at the White House. She said the president she currently works for behaves like an alcoholic, the vice president is a conspiracy theorist, and the most likely explanation for the ramblings of the richest man on earth is that he's on drugs. It doesn't sound like she works there. It sounds like she works here. Susie Myers. Where is Susie? Where is Susie? Susie Myers, we go. She unloaded on the most powerful people on earth like she was the drunk coworker at the office Christmas party. I'm gonna tell you one more thing, JD. He does wear eyeliner. And the confessions did not stop there.
Some stunning new admissions from White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. including acknowledging that President Trump is score settling with recent prosecutions of his political enemies.
She also spoke candidly about the president's inner circle. She called Elon Musk an odd duck.
Russell Vought, architect of the Notorious Project 2025 and the head of the Office of Management and Budget, is a, quote, right-wing absolute zealot.
She goes on to talk about Attorney General Pam Bondi, for instance, saying that she whiffed initially in the first months of this administration with her handling of the Epstein files.
She does acknowledge the president himself is in the Epstein files, but not doing anything awful. She says the two men were sort of young, single playboys together.
I didn't think it was possible to make Trump's relationship with Epstein sound any worse, but Susie Wiles did it. You're not helping Trump's case by saying he and Epstein were playboys together. That's like saying, oh yeah, I was friends with Hannibal Lecter, but only because we're both foodies. But Wiles and the Trump team didn't just do interviews, they posed for glamour shots.
Everybody was on board, everybody knew the drill. When the photographer, the Vanity Fair photographer, went to the White House, we were there the entire day. We were camped in the Roosevelt Room.
There are individual glamour shots for J.D. Vance, as well as Trump's top advisor, Stephen Miller, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, among others.
This looks like a still from the pilot episode of Suits before they were all recast. They all thought they were gonna look so cool, and while they were posing for these glossy photos, their colleague was bad-mouthing them. This is like if you pose for a high school yearbook photo thinking you've been voted most likely to succeed, and then when it came out, your superlative said, most likely to his pants at lunch. But now, of course, this crack team of brainiacs are claiming the interviews they participated in and the photos they posed for were actually part of an elaborate hit piece.
This is, unfortunately, another example of disingenuous reporting, where you have a reporter who took the chief of staff's words wildly out of context, did not include the context those conversations were had within.
I'm sorry, what context would make these quotes sound better? When Susie said the president had an alcoholic's personality, she meant it as a good thing. Alcoholics have to be smart and resourceful so they can find places to hide their alcohol. At one point, Wiles even tried to deny she said Musk was a ketamine addict, but her denial only made things worse.
Wiles is blasting Vanity Fair for quoting her. In her interview with the New York Times, Wiles took issue with the quote attributed to her about Elon Musk's drug use. That's ridiculous, she said. I wouldn't have said it and I wouldn't know. But the Vanity Fair reporter, Chris Whipple, quote, played a tape for the times in which she could be heard saying it.
Don't deny saying something if you were recorded saying it. That's like if I said, I've never taken a closer look at anything. I only take one kind of look from a respectful distance. But okay, fine. Maybe Wiles really thinks this was a hit piece and she was tricked into saying things on the record that she thought were off the record. Anyone can make a mistake like that one time, right?
I spoke to Susie Wiles 11 times, 11 in-depth interviews over nearly a year.
She did 11 interviews with the same guy. You can't do 11 interviews with someone and then accuse them of writing a hit piece about you. If you go to a doctor one time and he leaves a sponge in your brain, that's a bummer. But if you go back to that same doctor 10 more times, that doctor's just using you to get rid of sponges. And then there was Vance, who tried an interesting new defense of Wiles. Her honesty is actually a good thing.
I've seen so many people who will say one thing to the president's face, Democrats and Republicans, and then will do the exact opposite behind the scenes. And you know why I really love Susie Wiles? Because Susie is who she is in the president's presence. She's the same exact person when the president isn't around.
Wait, so you're not denying what she said? You know what I love about Susie Wiles? She's the only one who will say to the president's face that he has the personality of an alcoholic. And he can't stay mad at her because he also has the memory of an alcoholic. Again, this is mostly stuff we already knew, but this time it's coming from a central figure inside the Trump team who knows what impact any of this will have. But in a few weeks, there's a chance Wiles' colleagues will be walking around the White House saying,
Where's Susie?
This has been A Closer Look.